Welcome to Bite at a Time Books, where we read you your favorite classics one bite at a time. My name is Bree Carlile, and I love to read and wanted to share my passion with listeners like you. You can sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com. You'll also find our new t-shirts in the shop, including podcast shirts and quote shirts from your favorite classic novels. Be sure to follow my show on your favorite podcast platform so you get all the new episodes. We're part of the Bite at a Time Books Productions Network. If you'd also like to hear what inspired your favorite classic author to write their novels, and what was going on in the world at the time, check out the Bite at a Time Books Behind the Story podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Today we'll be continuing Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Chapter 2. Cosette's Apprehensions. During the first fortnight in April, Jean Valjean took a journey. This, as the reader knows, happened from time to time at very long intervals. He remained absent a day or 2 days at the utmost. Where did he go? No one knew. Not even Cosette. Once only, on the occasion of one of these departures, she had accompanied him in a hackney coach as far as a little blind alley at the corner of which she read, Impasse des Planchettes. There he alighted, and the coach took Cosette back to the Rue des Babylons. It was usually when money was lacking in the house that Jean Valjean took these little trips. So Jean Valjean was absent. He had said, "I shall return in 3 days." That evening, Cosette was alone in the drawing room. In order to get rid of her ennui, she had opened her piano organ and had begun to sing, accompanying herself the while the chorus from Euryanthe, Hunters Astray in the Wood, which is probably the most beautiful thing in all the sphere of music. When she had finished, she remained wrapped in thought. All at once, it seemed to her that she heard the sound of footsteps in the garden. It could not be her father. He was absent. It could not be Toussaint. She was in bed, and it was 10 o'clock at night. She stepped to the shutter of the drawing room, which was closed, and laid her ear against it. It seemed to her that it was the tread of a man, and that he was walking very softly. She mounted rapidly to the first floor, to her own chamber, opened a small wicket in her shutter, and peeped into the garden. The moon was at the full. Everything could be seen as plainly as by day. There was no one there. She opened the window. The garden was absolutely calm, and all that was visible was that the street was deserted as usual. Cosette thought that she had been mistaken. She thought that she had heard a noise. It was a hallucination produced by the melancholy and magnificent chorus of Weber, which lays open before the mind terrified depths, which trembles before the gaze like a dizzy forest, and in which one hears the crackling of dead branches beneath the uneasy tread of the huntsman of whom one catches a glimpse through the twilight. She thought no more about it. Moreover, Cosette was not very timid by nature. There flowed in her veins some of the blood of the bohemian and the adventuress who runs barefoot. It will be remembered that she was more of a lark than a dove. There was a foundation of wildness and bravery in her. On the following day, at an earlier hour towards nightfall, she was strolling in the garden. In the midst of the confused thoughts which occupied her, she fancied that she caught for an instant a sound similar to that of the preceding evening, as though someone were walking beneath the trees in the dusk and not very far from her. But she told herself that nothing so closely resembles a step on the grass as the friction of two branches, which have moved from side to side, and she paid no heed to it. Besides, she could see nothing. She emerged from the thicket. She had still to cross a small lawn to regain the steps. The moon, which had just risen behind her, cast Cosette's shadow in front of her upon this lawn. As she came out from the shrubbery, Cosette halted in alarm. Beside her shadow, the moon outlined distinctly upon the turf another shadow, which was particularly startling and terrible. A shadow which had a round hat. It was the shadow of a man who must have been standing on the border of the clump of shrubbery, a few paces in the rear of Cosette. She stood for a moment without the power to speak, or cry, or call, or stir, or turn her head. Then she summoned up all her courage and turned round resolutely. There was no one there. She glanced on the ground. The figure had disappeared. She re-entered the thicket, searched the corners boldly, went as far as the gate, and found nothing. She felt herself absolutely chilled with terror. Was this another hallucination? What? 2 days in succession. One hallucination might pass, but 2 hallucinations? The disquieting point about it was that the shadow had assuredly not been a phantom. Phantoms do not wear round hats. On the following day, Jean Valjean returned. Cosette told him what she thought she had heard and seen. She wanted to be reassured and to see her father shrug his shoulders and say to her, "You are a little goose." Jean Valjean grew anxious. "It cannot be anything," said he. He left her under some pretext and went into the garden, and she saw him examining the gate with great attention. During the night, she woke up. This time she was sure, and she distinctly heard someone walking close to the flight of steps beneath her window. She ran to her little wicket and opened it. In point of fact, there was a man in the garden, with a large club in his hand. Just as she was about to scream, the moon lighted up the man's profile. It was her father. She returned to her bed, saying to herself, "He is very uneasy." Jean Valjean passed that night and the 2 succeeding nights in the garden. Cosette saw him through the hole in her shutter. On the 3rd night, the moon was on the wane, and had begun to rise later, at 1 o'clock in the morning, possibly. She heard a loud burst of laughter and her father's voice calling her, "Cosette!" She jumped out of bed, threw on her dressing gown, and opened her window. Her father was standing on the grass plot below. "I have waked you for the purpose of reassuring you," said he. "Look, there is your shadow with the round hat." And he pointed out to her on the turf, a shadow cast by the moon, and which did indeed bear considerable resemblance to the spectre of a man wearing a round hat. It was the shadow produced by a chimney pipe of sheet iron with a hood which rose above a neighboring roof. Cosette joined in his laughter. All her lugubrious suppositions were allayed, and the next morning, as she was at breakfast with her father, she made merry over the sinister garden haunted by the shadows of iron chimney pots. Jean Valjean became quite tranquil once more. As for Cosette, she did not pay much attention to the question whether the chimney pot was really in the direction of the shadow which she had seen, or thought she had seen, and whether the moon had been in the same spot in the sky. She did not question herself as to the peculiarity of a chimney pot which is afraid of being caught in the act, and which retires when someone looks at its shadow. For the shadow had taken the alarm when Cosette had turned round, and Cosette had thought herself very sure of this. Cosette's serenity was fully restored. The proof appeared to her to be complete, and it quite vanished from her mind whether there could possibly be anyone walking in the garden during the evening or at night. A few days later, however, a fresh incident occurred. Thank you for joining Bite at a Time Books today, while we read a bite of one of your favorite classics. Again, my name is Bree Carlile, and I hope you come back tomorrow for the next bite of Les Miserables. Don't forget, you can sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com. And while you're there, check out our t-shirt shop. You can look in the show notes or on our website, biteatatimebooks.com, for the rest of the links for our show. We'd love to hear from you on social media. You can find us everywhere at Bite at a Time Books.